So what you're looking at right now is Glorious's latest mouse design that's not a refresh, called the Model I. The silhouette of the mouse should look really familiar, and that's because it's essentially a spitting image of the Logitech G502 and the Razer Basilisk, two extremely popular mice from years past, and I guess to a certain extent the G604 as well. I actually own both the G502 and the Basilisk over the years, and at the respective time of release, they struck a really good balance between comfort and adding much needed buttons for games like WoW, but not too over the top that they were in your way for FPS games like COD. However, they both shared a common drawback in that they were just too heavy, especially the G502, making FPS games feel like a literal drag. So with the Model I, Glorious has done what they've done many times in the past. They've taken this wing-shaped design and fine-tuned it into what I currently think is the best iteration of this design, but it's not perfect, so let's get into the details. The Model I comes in at $59.99 US, and for this price you get the Model I with the extended cable, which is basically a very light shoelace, and a variety of magnetic side buttons so you can, to a certain extent, fine-tune the shape and feel of the mouse to your liking. Its design aesthetic is essentially what you would get if the Model O and the G502 or Basilisk would look like if they had a baby. The Model I weighs 69 grams, which alone sounds alright, but it's actually pretty significant when you consider the G502 Hero clocks in at around 120 grams, depending if you go wired or wireless. Now what's crazy is even at this weight, this is Glorious's largest mouse to date, so if you found the Model O or D not exactly to your liking, this could be the form factor for you. Speaking of comfort, what really adds to the overall ergonomics of the mouse are the magnetic side buttons. While you can't adjust all of the side buttons, which is a bit disappointing, you can modify the huge side button and the last button on the top row. Both of these come with 3 different replacements that fits different needs. First, we have these blank plates. They're pretty straightforward. These completely remove the buttons functionality, so if you're playing games where you don't need the additional buttons, you won't have to worry about misclicking. The next pair are, for a lack of better phrasing, are like stealth buttons. They're contoured in a way where they don't really get in your way, but they're there if you want to use them. And finally, we have the final set, which are really prominent. These keys were designed to be right up against your thumb to get the quickest response, but you'll of course have to be more mindful of where you place your thumb. The Model I not only uses magnets to secure the side buttons, but also uses friction from the pegs and tabs seen here as well. This makes things a lot more secure, but it also makes it a pain that has to swap, if I'm being totally honest. I'm thinking Glorious should have included a small plastic tool or something to make it a little bit easier to remove these keys. You may have already noticed already, but this mouse is not wireless, which is a bit of a shame, but it does come with the extended cable that when paired with a bungee still works really well. Having used this mouse for a few weeks now, I found that you can't really go wrong with any of the thumb tip options, but my favorite is the stealth one. The curve sits right at the tip of my thumb, so I don't have to resort to using a blank to mitigate misclicks because that's not an issue at all, and I get to keep the extra button when needed. However, I can't say the same for the rear button on the top row though. For this button, I definitely prefer either the blank or the stealth one, and the reason why is because the most prominent button sticks out further than I would like. The issue is that yeah, the third button is right there when you need it, but its height made it really tricky for me to consistently hit the second button without triggering the third during heated PvP moments. Obviously your experience may differ, so it's really nice to see a variety of options available here. Like with other Glorious mice, the Model I has 3 zones of RGB lighting. Not much to say here other than it looks really good in person, and if you like RGB, then get the white variant because it showcases the effect the best. At the bottom, you see Glorious's PTFE G-Skate feet. They're consistently smooth and they're actually pretty durable. Even on the fairly abrasive Glorious Ice glass embedded mousepad, they've held up pretty well on my older Model O wireless, so they should do just fine on the Model I. If you're hoping to use the G-Float ceramic feet, that is unfortunately not available yet. Glorious does have other accessories like the additional grips that you can add on though. So far things are looking pretty good. The form factor is comfortable, it's light, the buttons are adjustable, but there is one thing holding it back. Using this mouse day to day, I found that it creaks quite a bit and it was driving me absolutely nuts. After poking it, squeezing it, flexing it every which way, I found that the sound was coming from the wing portion where the top and bottom enclosure meets, which I didn't notice happening on any of my other Glorious mice. I found that while taking this mouse apart for the interior shots that if I loosened these 2 screws to reduce the clamping pressure between the 2 housing, the creaking is a lot less noticeable. This isn't enough to deter me since I really do like the shape and weight of this mouse, but I do know that this could be a deal breaker for many, so do keep that in mind. Now that we've looked over the exterior of the Model I, let's see what's going on inside. What remains similar to other Glorious mice is the BAM sensor. It still has the same 1000 Hz polling and tracking speed of 400 IPS. Some of the switches have remained the same as well, the green core F switch for the scroll wheel and the Huano green switch for the scroll wheel clicker, which is also used for the 4 side buttons, but there have been some changes made from Glorious's older mice as well. A minor one is that the DPI switches are now from TTC, which provides a lighter and clickier sound, with the biggest change being the move from Omron switches to Kale ones for the left and right mouse clickers, similar to those found in the wireless Model D. It's hard to tell which model it is exactly, but it looks really similar to the Kale GM 8.0, but since the clicker plastic is orange, the signature color of Glorious, it could be a variation made just for them, just like how the BAM sensor is a specialized part for Glorious from Pixar. I don't really have a preference between the Omron or the Kale switches in the more recent mouses, as they do feel nice and sound nice in their own way. It's hard to explain, so here are some clips you can hear for yourself. To control the various mouse options, you'll be jumping into the core software. In the RGB tab, you can pick from a variety of animations, but my complaint from the Model O wireless still stands. It would be really nice to be able to control each of the 3 individual zones separately. In the key binding section, you have full control of the mouse binding assignments as well. So if you wanted to put your left click on one of the side buttons for maybe accessibility reasons, sure, why not? DPI, macros, shortcuts can all be configured as well. I don't know how useful this functionality is going to be, but if you have a Glorious keyboard, you can opt to change profiles and layers from the mouse as well. In the performance menu, you can set multiple stages of DPI and even reduce them to make it easier to cycle through. Lift-off distance, debounce, polling rate options are all here as well. All in all, this is a pretty great mouse. For the games I play, which are Warzone, HOTS, WoW, and Lost Ark, it's been really easy to switch between the games, and having these extra side buttons have been really nice. Dedicated PvP targeting macros in WoW is a great example of this. The only other things that would make this the perfect mouse for me right now would be fixing the creak out of the box, maybe with a rubber grommet or some sort of dampening material in the wing area, and of course if it was wireless, but I'm sure we'll be seeing that pretty soon. Users of the G502 and Basilisk will feel right at home, and I believe they'll even have a better experience with this mouse because the weight makes such a huge difference. If you haven't tried this form factor in general, I would highly recommend you give it a shot regardless of the brand that you go with. Well, that's it for today. Like and subscribe, it really helps me out, and I will see you guys next time.